Thank you all for joining us. Please enjoy the event.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We are very, very excited to bring to you today's event, What Can the Federal Government Do to Support School Integration? My name is Stefan Lewis Redding, and I am the Executive Director of Next 100 and Senior Fellow at the Century Foundation, where I work on the Bridges Collaborative with my fabulous colleagues. I am a Black man with curly hair and a checkered shirt with a blue tie and a blue suit. I'm sitting in front of a bookshelf. I will ask all of our speakers today to introduce themselves in that manner for greater accessibility for the benefit of all of the folks tuning in to today's event. Today's event is co-hosted by the Century Foundation's Bridges Collaborative, the National Coalition on School Diversity, and Magnet Schools of America. Before we get started, a few quick housekeeping notes. Please note that this event is being recorded and live streamed. Also, if you'd like to submit a question for our panelists, please do so using the chat feature. Now let's go ahead and get started. School integration is not a new issue. As long as there has been America, there has been segregation. And yet, as with so many struggles for the civil rights that our Constitution, specifically the 14th Amendment, guarantees to everyone under the law, historically, African Americans and other disenfranchised peoples have had to turn to the federal government to take action to guarantee their rights. It is very fitting then that today's presentation focuses on the federal role in school integration. For many of us, the federal government has had to be the ultimate guarantor of our rights. The issue of school integration and the federal role is not new to me or my family. My grandfather, Lewis Redding, was the only Black lawyer in Delaware for a quarter century. His legal career followed stellar academic accomplishments. Only 2 generations removed from slavery. I want you to think about that for a second. His grandmother was an enslaved person in Kent County, Maryland, which is not 80 miles from where I sit today here in my home in Baltimore. He graduated from Brown University and Harvard Law School. He then went on to be part of the famed legal team that won Brown versus Board, alongside Thurgood Marshall and others. 6 decades after my grandfather argued Brown, his grandson, me, I found myself the principal of a functionally segregated school in New Orleans, Louisiana, where 99% of our students identified as African American and 96% qualified for free and reduced lunch. And unfortunately, in that regard, my school is not unique. In every major city in this country, we still have schools that are highly segregated by class and by race. And today, we are here to talk about what the federal government can do about it. I'm so humbled and so honored to introduce our first guest speaker, for whom I have so much respect and admiration. United States Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut is well known for his impassioned advocacy of the families and children of the tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary a decade ago. But I think he is not as well known, at least in the public. Certainly he is among advocates, for his steadfast support of the efforts to combat the scourge of segregation in this country. Senator Murphy, we are so grateful for your work and for your voice on this crucial issue. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. With that, I would like to welcome United States Senator Chris Murphy.
Well, Stephen, thank you very much for inviting me to say a few words at the outset of this really important event. I'm deeply appreciative of the Century Foundation and your partners for bringing together people to talk about the issue of desegregating schools across the country. Eager to hear about the conclusions and recommendations that come out of this meeting. Yeah, listen, this matters a lot to me. I grew up in Connecticut, represent Connecticut. It's a state that has a lot going for it, but it is one of the most racially and economically segregated states in the nation. And I am just absolutely convinced that our kids in my state are poorer for not having experiences that put them in contact with other kids that have different backgrounds than they do, grew up in families of different ethnicities or religions or races than their own. And in a country that sometimes feels like it's coming apart a bit as we retreat to corners, social media and the way we gather news sorts us away from each other into silos, we have an obligation to think more aggressively and more creatively about how to build bridges early in life, how to give kids a sense of broader community aside from whatever primary tribe they affiliate with. We're not doing a good job of that today. In fact, as you know, and as you'll talk about, our schools in most places across this country are getting more segregated along both racial and ethnic lines than they were 10, 20 years ago. All of the promise that we had coming out, not just of Brown v. Board of Education, but in 1996, when Chef v. O'Neill passed in Connecticut, it seems to be a little bit further away from us. So you're going to talk about what the federal role is, and I hope that you'll talk about two pieces of legislation that I'm introducing. One is the Strength and Diversity Act. That's a bill that is modeled after a proposal from the Obama administration that was midwifed by my great friend John King. That's a proposal that just says, listen, let's put a little bit of federal money behind voluntary efforts that states and counties and municipalities are engaged in to promote racial and economic integration. Now, we've got some of these programs in Connecticut, but they're really poorly funded. We've got choice programs, but they're expensive, and in tight budget times, schools don't want to put money into it. There's often, sort of seeming political risk in getting behind these programs, which I think is largely illusory. But the Strength and Diversity Act would just say, hey, listen, let's put some federal dollars to make it easier for states to engage in those voluntary desegregation programs. The second piece of legislation I have is the Magnet Act, and that's a piece of legislation designed to really plus up federal supports for magnet schools. In Connecticut, our magnet schools were the way in which we made sure we were in compliance with Chef v. O'Neill, which was our 1990s Supreme Court decision forcing the economic and racial desegregation of our schools. I've come to believe that magnet schools are not a cure-all, but they are a place where people and kids from different towns, from different neighborhoods, from different economic, ethnic, and racial backgrounds come together and learn together. Our magnet schools are really healthy places, really successful places in Connecticut. And while we have more of them, per capita than most states do, other states should have the ability to draw down federal funds to build out these magnet schools. So I think these are two common sense approaches to allow states and municipalities to engage in the voluntary work of trying to build healthy, diverse learning environments. And you talk about the evidence we have. It's pretty irrefutable. It's kids that go to school in diverse environments. They test great. They have lower rates of intersection with criminal justice. They don't drop out as much. All that is really true. But if you've been in a truly diverse school, if you've sat there and been part of that environment, man, there's joy there. It really is. I mean, one of my last experiences, and Connecticut doesn't have many of these really diverse schools where you got big populations of low income, middle income, high income, white kids, black kids. A couple cities have done a really good job of this. Meriden, Connecticut is one of them. So I was in a Meriden high school, and these kids knew the benefit that they were getting, right? They were very conscious of the fact that they were getting something. They were getting a head start on life by being with all these people from different places and backgrounds. And it was just so joyful to see how joyful they were about it. And so schools that are going into this work, states that are doing a little bit more work in this area should do so with no trepidation. They should just come and spend a little time at Maloney High School in Meriden, Connecticut, and you'll see what these kids think about having the chance to go to school in racially and socially and economically integrated places. So really looking forward to what comes out of this meeting today. Thanks for letting me say a few words at the outset.
Senator Murphy, thank you so much for being here. we'll let you go, but can I get you out of here on one quick question, which is, you said these are common sense measures. I couldn't agree with you more. Could you tell us a little bit about what the bipartisan case for addressing segregation is? In other words, like, why is this a bipartisan issue that people of all political stripes can get behind?
Well, certainly the proposals we're talking about here today should not be political or partisan, because this is not a heavy hand from the federal government. You certainly have Republicans who don't like it when the federal government tells local school districts what to do. That's not what we're doing here today. We're saying, listen, for states that want to be engaged in efforts of integration, here's some voluntary funds that you can draw down. Same thing with magnet schools. No state's forced to build a magnet school, but if you do, we're gonna help you. I think there is increasingly a sense on the left and right here today that we have got to take some steps to stitch back together the things that unite us in this country. And so, while we've had a hard time getting Republicans to work with us on a variety of measures, including civil rights measures, I do think that everybody here understands how the dangers of America becoming compartmentalized and siloed. And this is one of the ways to prevent that from happening. And the voluntary nature of these bills that I'm introducing, I hope, creates a real opening for Republicans to work with us.
Amazing. Well, we know you're a busy man. We so appreciate your work on this issue. You've got a lot of fans in the audience here, people who know you and your office are committed to combating segregation in this country. And we just appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with us. And we're excited for the rest of today's event. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Well, wonderful words from Senator Murphy of Connecticut. And we are going to now transition to hear from some senior officials in the United States Department of Education to talk about a very exciting new grant that was just announced last week that many folks on this call have heard about. And so I'm going to pass the presentation over to Bernadine Futrell and Elson Nash. And Bernadine Futrell is the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Equity and Discretionary Grants and Support Services in OESE at the United States Department of Education. And Elson Nash is the Director of the Division of School Choice and Improvement Programs at the United States Department of Education. Bernadine and Elson, we are so honored to have you with us today. We're so excited about this program, and we're excited for you to be with us to tell us a little bit more about it. So I'm going to turn it over to you for about 10 minutes to talk to us about it.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon and good morning to everyone on the line. Thank you all for being a part of this work, being a partner with us. We are very excited to share information about our grants and think that this is an exceptional opportunity to do that. I'm Bernadine Futrell. I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary here in the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education, and my role is our discretionary grants, equity, as well as our support services. I come to the department by way of the Office of Head Start, where I was able to work directly with our young Head Start children and our families to really think about how to reconnect children and families back to learning after the pandemic and throughout it as well. And I'm grateful for that. And I take that lens in everything that I do. I know we're in the K-12 space now, but it's important that I just mentioned that some of the work we did at Head Start was really about ensuring that the kids who were eligible for the Head Start program could also participate and engage in classes with their neighbors and their friends. And so we were able to implement policies that allowed kind of one way in through the SNAP eligibility program. That's one of the ways that we were able to make sure that if you play together, you can go to school together and think about ways to really strengthen our community and our nation. Today, we have a wonderful, unique opportunity to talk about a new grant program that the department has released. It's our Fostering Diverse Schools grant. The purpose of this grant is really to ensure that we are backing up communities and schools who want to come together and create innovative ways to really provide equitable access to all students in their communities for education. Through this Fostering Diverse Schools grants, we are looking for school districts to come with ideas, plans, or they may be kind of further along to really think about how to implement it and partner with us so that we can learn those lessons and we can scale and share more broadly what it means to have truly diversity by design through our schools and how we as a federal government can support that. We're going to talk about fostering diverse schools. Before I do that, I do want to also mention that we also have our Magnet Schools Assistance Program. Many of you may be grantees who have this grant at the moment. We encourage you to look at our MSAP programs as another lever to layer on with this Fostering Diverse Schools competition to really be in support of diversity in your communities. And finally, as we kind of, it's not lost on me the date that we're here, the forthcoming anniversary of Brown. And to me, Brown really signals everything that we're doing and that we're trying to do, especially through my office, discretionary grants and equity. We're coming together, we're identifying resources, thinking of creative ways to really back up our communities to do the work that you are doing. And as we do this work, I want to commend you and thank you for being a partner and also encourage you to continue to push us and continue to partner with us as a federal government, because again, our role is to back you up. And as you're doing the work and uncovering opportunities to give more access to children and their families, that's what we're here for. So now I'm going to transition over to my colleague, Elson. He's going to talk about some of the technical specifics of the Fostering Diverse Schools program. Again, thank you for having us here today. And just before I go, I would be remiss if I did not share that Brown and the Brown decision is something that I hold deep in my heart. It's a part of our family history, our family legacy. My great-grandfather, Denmark Pearson, worked very closely with Levi Pearson and the entire community in Clarendon County, trying to get a bus for transportation for our family, for the communities there. And at that time, Levi's case was dismissed and refiled and kind of rolled into the Briggs v. Elliott and all the other cases that led to the Brown v. Board. But one of the things that we take in our legacy as a family is knowing that when it's time to do the right thing, knowing that there may be some losses, but the end of it, the long term, what happens at the end is going to make us all better and we're all going to be stronger for it. So the fact that I can stand here today and talk about a Fostering Diverse Schools grant competition is evidence of that. And so as we continue this work, we will continue to move forward, and we want you to know rather that the federal government is your partner. We support you, and please engage and connect with us on these opportunities. And with that, I'm turning it over to my dear colleague, Elson. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Bernadine Futrell, my colleague. As Stefan mentioned earlier, to provide a little context for myself. So I'm African-American male, bald-headed, looks like an older version of Little Bill with a striped shirt on and a tie. So that those of you who don't have the opportunity to visualize who I am, that is who I am. I also, from a historical standpoint, have benefited from these types of programs. My son actually went to a DC's magnet school, Duke Ellington School for the Arts, and was successful there. Also went is at Brown University, and he wants to be an attorney. And so there's this interesting thread that the strong foundations that our country has provided us leads through generations, which is important for this program. So this program was created with $10 million from the Title IV Part A of the Every Student Succeeds Act. And it will provide the necessary technical assistance and capacity building in the form of grants. So essentially, we're talking $10 million, which will come out to anywhere between perhaps 4 to 5 planning grants and hopefully 2 to 3 implementation grants. This is an opportune time to use this as a demonstration for the greater success on the policy agenda that Senator Murphy talked about. So through these grants, we have two absolute priorities: planning grants. This provides the applicants the ability to plan for these types of activities, which are those activities that help to foster school diversity. And in addition, we have absolute priority for competitive implementation grants. So for those districts that are a little bit further along, they might have plans that are already available and they're ready to implement. We have implementation grants up to $4 million to be able to actually implement. And then we have 3 competitive preference priorities. So once an applicant goes to planning or implementation, they can then consider how they can obtain additional points for competitive preference priorities. Those priorities are 1 or more high-need local education agencies, cross-agency coordination, and regional approaches. So the idea is that if you have the opportunity to focus more heavily on high-need LEAs, you can apply and get additional points for that. Cross-agency coordination, we know that many of districts work closely with housing agencies, work closely with transportation agencies. If you have the ability to coordinate those activities to help further support school diversity through housing, transportation, etc., you get additional points that way. And then last but not least, if you have the ability to have a more comprehensive regional approach to this endeavor in scaling up, you would get additional points that way. That's the brief overview. Please go to our website. We can make sure that our website is in the chat. We have webinars scheduled. One is scheduled for this Thursday. All of our webinars at 2:00 Eastern time. So this Thursday, we'll have a webinar. Next Tuesday, we'll have a webinar. And the following Thursday, we'll have a webinar. In between those times, if you have questions, please send us the questions at FDS, as it Fostering Diverse Schools, FDS@ed.gov, FDS@ed.gov. If you have any questions, we answer those questions and we'll get back to you. So with that, just want to thank you once again for this opportunity. Thank Stefan and all of the members who have been working closely on this issue and giving us the opportunity to administer this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Elson and Bernadine. Before you go anywhere, we wanted to take the opportunity to take 1 or 2 audience questions. And so I have one question from the audience that I would love to pose to either of you. Either person can take it. And it is actually, our first question comes from a reporter at Chalkbeat. So it's good to know that there's press interest, media interest in this, because we want people to apply to this incredibly innovative and interesting opportunity. So first question comes from a Chalkbeat reporter, and the question is, can you explain why the priority in the grant is for socioeconomic diversity and not racial diversity? So I'll let either one of you take that question.
Thank you. I can answer and respond, but again, thank you for being here. Elson, thank you for walking through that, and definitely want to invite everyone listening to join our technical assistance webinars that we'll be doing. So this particular NIA allows for districts to submit plans for diversity within their district. So they can include social economic diversity, they can include race, they can include other factors such as ELL status. They're all permissible within this grant competition. Specifically relating to how we award points in terms of the priorities, we identified SES as a priority to kind of get towards some of the, to focus the diversity on SES while also making it available for people to put in proposals for other things. So specifically, the priority points would be for SES, but you can do racial diversity integration work through this grant competition. In fact, we would be happy to work with any potential applicants through our TA and our technical assistants to kind of help us clarify and answer exactly how the points work, as well as what the purpose of the program is.
Wonderful. I just want to thank you again. I mean, you providing so many opportunities for people to learn more about this. So I encourage everyone out there to visit the website, look at the fine print. You have 60 days to get an application, and as of last Monday, right? So don't dally on getting an application in. And as Elson alluded to, there are a number of opportunities to attend webinars hosted by the Department of Education to learn more and to ask more questions. Ask all the questions that you have. You can email questions in. So I applaud you on, just the transparency and the availability for folks to be able to do this. And we're looking forward to getting some applications. And with that, I will let you two go.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for the information, and thanks for your work. And we'll move into the next segment of our program. So next up, I'm really, really excited to introduce a panel of experts, and they're experts who represent a number of different organizations to answer the fundamental question that we're posing today, which is, what more can the federal government do to promote integration? So I'd like to introduce our panelists, and then I will pose an opening question to everyone. But first, let me introduce our esteemed panel. First up, we've got Kayla Patrick here. Kayla is a special assistant from the Office of Planning, Evaluation, and Policy Development at the U.S. Department of Education. So excited to have you here, Kayla. Second, we have Sarah Plasencia, who is a policy advisor at the Learning Policy Institute. Sarah, very, very excited to have you here as well. Next, Hallie Potter, a senior fellow at the Century Foundation. Welcome, Hallie. And then last but certainly not least, Raman Taheri is the CEO of Magnet Schools of America. So truly a power-packed panel. My first question to you, panel, we're not going to waste any time. We're going to dive right in. As a number of speakers have alluded to, tomorrow marks 69 years since the Supreme Court decided Brown v. Board and officially ended the legal segregation of schools. So my question to you is, why do you think school integration still matters? This can be a personal answer. Why does it matter to you? Or why should it matter to all of us? So you can take the liberty to answer how you want. And then if you want to add on, why are we still talking about this issue if the Supreme Court decided it 69 years ago? Okay, so one more time, and then we'll just go in the order in which I introduced everybody. So it'll be Kayla, then Sarah, then Hallie, then Raman. Given that the anniversary of Brown v. Board is coming up, why do you think school integration still matters? And why are we still talking about it? Kayla, we'll let you kick us off.
Thank you so much, Stefan, and thank you for having me here. I am Kayla Patrick. I am a Black woman wearing my hair naturally. I'm wearing a pink shirt with a black sweater and glasses. I am really excited to be talking about this particular topic because it matters today, just as it mattered 69 years ago. My father went to segregated schools in Daytona Beach, Florida. And so this is an issue that I'm really familiar with. And unfortunately, I am very clear on the fact that we haven't made as much progress in the 69 years as we should have. And so the research is clear, as Senator Murphy said. The outcomes of students across the board, and that's all students, are much better when they get to learn in diverse learning environments. And so the administration, including the secretary and the president, remain committed to efforts to voluntarily increase school diversity. And so I think we are clear-eyed on the importance of this issue. And so I will hand it over to my friends on the panel.
Sarah, same question to you.
Thanks. I'll start by just describing myself. I'm Latina. I have long black hair. I'm wearing a gray blazer and I have red lipstick. It's great to be here with you all. I'll start by noting some of the extensive research that outlines the benefits of school integration that I know many others have mentioned, from increased civic participation to higher academic achievement. And to put this in the current context, the most recent NAEP results found that the average civic scores declined for the first time ever. Other data on school diversity also show that a growing number of students attend schools that are highly segregated by both race and poverty, also known as hyper-segregated schools, which are impacted by a number of educational inequities such as resource disparities and a lack of rigorous coursework. And during the height of integration efforts, and when the federal government took an assertive role in promoting access to equal educational opportunities, there was immense progress. So data show both the large reduction in the achievement gap between Black and white students during the era of desegregation and school finance reforms in the 1970s and early 80s, when the gap decreased by more than 50%. And it also shows the large increase in the gap when desegregation efforts ended during the 80s. So despite evidence of the benefits of integrated learning environments for all students, schools are resegregating at alarming rates. And so while there has been this progress after the Brown decision, and we've heard about this exciting new program, the promise to expand access to quality education to all students has not been fulfilled yet, which underscores the importance of this discussion today.
Great. I'll jump in. My name is Hallie Potter. I'm a white woman with glasses. I'm in an office and I'm wearing a pink blazer. I wanted to start by saying that my passion for school integration goes back to some of my own experiences as a student and as a teacher. Neither of my parents had college degrees, but I had the chance to go to a public high school where a lot of parents had gone to college and where it was really the norm for students to go to college. And I saw the difference that that made for me. And at the same time, I grew up going to schools that were really racially segregated in a predominantly white environment. And I think that did a real disservice to me and to my classmates. And when I started my career as an elementary school teacher, it was really important to me to find somewhere to teach that served a diverse student body and had a really diverse staff. And so when I think about the work that we do from a policy perspective on school integration now and working with districts and charters and housing organizations across the country through our Bridges Collaborative, I think we're still doing this work for reasons that are both depressing and forward-looking. I think we're still doing the work of integration because as a country, we never finished that job in the decades immediately surrounding Brown v. Board. And we never approached integration in a way that centered communities of color, which is what we absolutely have to do moving forward. But I think the more uplifting reason that we're still working on school integration is that actually, even if we'd gotten things as right as we could earlier, integration shouldn't just be a set it and forget it thing. I think it's a lens through which we have to constantly be examining the work that we're doing on education and pushing on making sure that we are getting equity down to the classroom level and constantly pushing on making sure that our schools are as diverse as our changing country.
Raman, we'll toss it to you for the same question.
Sure, and I'll try to be quick. My name is Raman Tahiri. I'm the CEO of Magnet Schools of America. Thank you, Stefan and Hallie, and everyone for having me here. I am a male of Middle Eastern descent. I describe my complexion as tan, black hair with a growing amount of gray, wearing a navy blue jacket and a white shirt. I co-sign everything that my colleagues said. I'm not going to repeat Sarah's recitation of the research, but I think it's important to keep in mind. I come at this also, like many others, I can offer anecdotal personal experiences. For me, it has always been important to learn and to work in diverse environments. I've always felt more comfortable. I've always felt like there's a richness that's not otherwise available. It's always helped me grow and be better. And I see that with my own children in schools. They both attend diverse schools, and especially my son, who's old enough now to articulate it, really describes the value and the benefit that he gets from having friends from all walks of life, whether racially diverse, socioeconomically diverse, different neighborhoods, what have you. So I think on the one hand, it's important to keep in mind that evidence base, but then on the other hand, it's important to just know and be familiar with how it works. And I think to answer your question, why are we still talking about this? Hallie, you mentioned we haven't solved it yet, but we're still talking about it because we know that it works and it's important. And so I think, I'm hopeful. I look forward to continuing to do this work, and I think we're making progress. But the part that keeps me optimistic is that I know it's valuable. I know it means something. So I know it's worth continuing to do this work.
Fantastic. Appreciate all of your answers. And you can see how deeply personal this issue is to everybody. I mean, everyone has some connection point to this issue. I'm going to ask each of you a very specific question next, and then we'll open it up to other questions and even questions from the audience. So if you're in the audience and you have questions, please feel free to use the chat function to pose your question. Kayla, I'd like to start with you because we just had that great presentation from some of your colleagues at the Department of Education. We know that the Department of Ed is launching a new, an exciting new grant program. And I guess I have a question about how the program fits into the department's broader agenda for educational equity and excellence, and what other steps the department is taking to support diverse learning environments.
Yeah, thank you. As Bernadine and Elson mentioned, we are so excited about this particular program. This very similar program was started in 2016, but folks never got awards. And so we're really excited to have this opportunity to actually see the entire program through and ensure that grantees get the chance to either start planning or implementation grants. But as a whole, this administration has put academic acceleration at the forefront of its agenda, and equity and school diversity is absolutely a part of that. And we remain committed to efforts to champion and promote diverse schools and diverse learning environments. And that's evident through the Secretary's supplemental priorities, where we include language around school diversity and around serving underserved students, including students of color and students from low-income backgrounds. And in those priorities, we try to include those priorities in grant competitions whenever possible. So we're not just thinking about this through one grant program, but all of the grant programs that we administer. And so that's one thing. And as Bernadine also mentioned, along with the Fostering Diverse Schools Demonstration Grant Program, which we are really excited about, we also have the Magnet School Program, which is our only program that has statutory language around desegregation efforts. And so we think that program is really important. And just this year, or I guess a few months ago now, we asked for a large increase in that program. And so we're hoping that Congress will give us that increase so that we can continue that work around school diversity through that program. Additionally, last year, we awarded the first ever grants through the Hawkins program, which is around educator diversity. We think that educator diversity is equally as important as student diversity. And so making sure that students have access to educators that look like them and have similar experiences as they do is critical. And we know the research shows that to be important. And so we are investing where we can in that program as well. And so those are just some of the programs that we are moving forward. But just like I said, it's a really priority of the Secretary and this administration to integrate efforts to promote school diversity whenever we can.
Fantastic. And Sarah, I'm going to move to you, and actually we're going to take it over to the legislative branch and take it out of the executive for a second. I know you're a student of Congress, and we just heard from Senator Murphy, but from your perspective, what can Congress do to support school integration? And have there been any advances in recent years? What proposals are you hearing about that are now on the table? To talk to us a little bit about Congress.
Sure. Thanks, Stefan. And so there has been progress in recent years, and certainly more that the federal government can do to support integration. These actions can be organized into two buckets, one being investing in integration efforts, and another I'll discuss is issuing guidance to support efforts to create more diverse schools. So in terms of funding, the federal government can establish and provide funding for programs to support state and local efforts to create more diverse schools, such as the Strength and Diversity Act that Senator Murphy discussed, which would support voluntary, locally led efforts to increase diversity in schools and early learning settings. The administration, as Kayla has mentioned, has requested $100 million for the Fostering Diverse School program over the past 2 years, which aligns with the goals of the Strength and Diversity Act. And while this larger program has not been funded, Congress has directed the department to use existing funds to support diversity efforts that is led to the rollout of this current program. And hopefully funding for this program will continue in the future. An increase in federal funding provided under ESSA can also support magnet schools and other integration efforts. This includes Title I school improvement funds that can be used to support school diversity, and the Magnet Schools Assistance Program that I know folks have already mentioned under Title IV, which provide grants to eligible districts to establish and operate magnet schools under a required or voluntary desegregation plan. And in recent years, there have been slight increases to funding for this program, but funding has been low, reaching a high point of $139 million this year. The program can also ensure that grantees are using evidence-based practices. So for example, in the past 2 grant notices, there was an inclusion of a priority for interdistrict or regional approaches, which aligns with the research that we know that most segregation happens between, not within school districts. And there was also a priority for applicants that seek to develop whole school magnets to ensure that all students within a school have access to high quality programming. And so incorporating these evidence-based components into grant priorities is particularly important because research shows that diverse magnet schools that have positive social and academic outcomes share common features. And the research identifies these as first door components, which help bring students from different backgrounds into the school, and then also second door components, which help to foster inclusive environments within diverse schools. And I'll also note that in recent years, Congress has acted in a bipartisan way to remove several prohibitions on the use of local use of federal funds for transportation to support integration. And this is a critical step forward as the provision of free transportation is key to diversifying schools. Without this resource, schools may only be realistic for those families with the resources and flexibility to provide their children with transportation. So those are a few of the funding levers and some of the advancement that have been made, and certainly more to be done, but I will pass it over to my next panelist.
Thanks so much, Sarah. And I'm glad you mentioned the transportation provisions. Those are little, very little discussed provisions that at the end of the day could make a big difference. Raman, I want to move to you. Magnet schools have been alluded to a lot here, but I want to just sort of toss the question to you. How can magnet schools be part of the solution to increasing school integration? And what is the role for federal support of magnet schools?
Yeah, thanks, Stefan. First, I want to say it's very difficult going after these great panelists because they have added so much information that I would also like to mention. But I will say for magnet schools specifically, they have their genesis in the modern civil rights movement. So they really were developed as this kind of the first and best tool to help desegregate schools. I think that magnet schools in general have grown and matured since that time, and what they really offer now through innovative curriculum and theme programming is the ability to really harness school choice to try to move from desegregation to integration. So moving from just that numerical piece of, Sarah called it first door, getting the kids into the school, to really trying to create that environment where you're developing a truly inclusive and diverse student body where students learn from each other, enjoy being with each other, develop friendships that help broaden their perspective. So I think magnet schools are an integral part of what we're trying to do here. And I think in terms of the federal role, obviously it was alluded to earlier that within the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, the Magnet Schools Assistance Program is the only program that specifically mentions race and the reduction of racial isolation. So that's an important component of what magnet schools are about and what they're meant to accomplish. But I think that they can do so much more. And so I would love to see the Department of Education put out some guidance on how states and districts can use formula funds to help develop and support magnet schools, or schools that act like magnet schools, use a theme to attract diverse students and create a supportive learning environment. I'd like to see the Department of Education use priority 2 of the Secretary's supplemental priorities and find discretionary grants where that would be appropriate, and to talk specifically about how we can increase integration and focus on the development of magnet schools. I think that's not that heavy of a lift, and I think it can be done. And then there's the congressional action, I think, that Sarah and others have mentioned. So obviously the Strength and Diversity Act would be a wonderful piece. The Magnet Act would be a wonderful piece. I think that the Fostering Diverse Schools program is a terrific start to try to get districts to think about a comprehensive plan to integrate schools and what it would take. And so I think all of those pieces from a federal perspective can help the development and support of magnet schools. And I think magnet schools have a special and unique and important place in this effort to integrate schools.
Fantastic. Next question goes to Hallie. And again, I'm really appreciating all the specifics from the panelists. I mean, you all are not dodging these questions. They're giving us very specific things to look for. It's very much appreciated. Hallie, you've heard from all the panelists now. What other types of federal support do you think would be helpful to school districts and charter schools in order to help them move the needle on integration? Does anything else come to mind?
Yeah, this is Hallie again. I would love to see the federal government also moving beyond just competitive grant programs. Competitive grant programs are great for giving opportunities to places that are ready to seize them. There's already some interest and excitement. But I think students deserve access to diverse learning environments in whatever communities they are, even if those are communities that have a long way to go in terms of recognizing the need for integration and the opportunities for the different ways they could try to make that work. And so I think one of the things that I'd like to see is a dual approach that really looks at the increased role we need for federal funding and specific federal support for integration. So Title I funding is the main federal program to address the need to provide more resources for students who are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds. And as important as Title I is, it's still not enough to actually meet those education funding gaps that we see. And so I think we need to see dramatic increases in Title I. And what if we did that in a way that we also set aside a portion of that money that would be specifically focused on school integration and make that available to school districts across the country that have been identified based on having demographics in the metro area that can support integration, so that that money is available. They don't have to compete for it. We could actually see this becoming a reality in every community across the country. In smaller scale ways, because I know that's a big lift, there's also a lot of technical assistance that I think would be helpful to school districts and charter schools. We hear from our Bridges Collaborative members that are always just hungry to hear, how are other people approaching their demographic analyses and their enrollment projections, and what different types of mechanisms are they using to promote integration in enrollment? The federal government can be a huge resource for helping to share those lessons and to provide tools for leaders who are doing the work on the ground. And then finally, I'd also love to see a federal role for pushing on integration in different ways beyond just thinking about the school as the unit. School district boundaries have come up a little bit already. We know that there could be a lot more we could do if we could find ways to integrate across school district boundaries and to address some of the funding disparities that are caused by the way our district lines are drawn. I think there's a strong federal role there to provide support. I think we also need to be looking at integration within classrooms, and there have been some exciting federal legislative proposals to promote integration within access to high levels of coursework in AP classes and IB curriculum. Only about 5% of racially diverse schools have their highest level courses that actually reflect the true racial diversity of their school overall. So we need to make sure that equity is showing up in terms of the actual opportunities within a school that students have. And I loved that Dr. Futrell talked about her background coming from working with Head Start. I think early education needs to be an important part of this picture too. And we could have a whole separate conversation about that. But I think there's also an exciting role for federal support to make sure that we are investing in children from the beginning and investing in ways that create high quality integrated early learning settings that then can help support diverse settings in K-12 and beyond.
Fantastic. I'm going to ask one more question before we turn over to Bridges Collaborative members to ask a question. And I'm going to just pose this and see who wants to bite. It's a question that I think is on a lot of people's minds. There's clearly no obvious answer or easy answer to it, but people are very interested at trying to parse out what's going to be coming down the pike this summer as the Supreme Court makes a decision in the Students for Fair Admissions case against Harvard and UNC. So the question really is, well, I guess there's two questions. One is, what do we think the impact could be on K-12 education? Again, the caveat being none of us know exactly what the Supreme Court is going to decide. So you're going to need to do a little bit of prognostication. But part two is, how can we make sure that no matter what the conditions are, no matter what the Supreme Court decides, that we're actually still moving forward on K-12 school integration and not backwards? Does anybody have any insights or any thoughts on that question? Don't all jump at once. No, it's a very.
I'm happy to.
Go ahead,
I'm happy to jump in. This is Raman again. I think, as you said, it's hard to predict exactly what the decision will look like and what it would mean specifically for K-12 education. I will say that regardless, as was mentioned earlier, with magnet schools, again, specifically, there is statutory text that mentions the reduction of racial isolation as a goal. I don't expect that to be impacted. I think, as many others have mentioned, there's so much more that LEAs, states, really interdistrict consortia can do to think about integration that would be considered, hopefully, under whatever Supreme Court decision comes down, racially neutral or sufficiently racially neutral to continue to pursue. And I think that Hallie mentioned lottery mechanisms, enrollment, targeted outreach. These are all tools that are very effective. We know from our members here at MSA that magnet schools use and rely on these tools every day. I think those tools can continue to go forward and be very important to push integration. And so I tend to be sanguine about this, regardless of what we're facing. I think that we can continue to do this work, succeed, and improve. And so I look forward to it.
That's great. And I really love your take on that. And I hope folks out there will be empowered to carry the fight on, no matter what the decision is here in the summer. All right. I want to bring in a couple of folks from the Bridges Collaborative. For those who don't know, the Bridges Collaborative is a national network of practitioners across the country from school districts, charter schools, and housing organizations who are implementing unique, innovative ways of addressing segregation in their midst. And they're all doing it in very different ways and in very different contexts. And we have two folks with us from the Bridges Collaborative representing very different contexts. And I want to get them each in for a question. So first, I'd like to invite Laura Furlong of Citizens of the World Charter Schools. And they operate schools in a number of different states. But Laura, would love to bring you in. Tell us who you are really quickly, and then ask your question.
Sure. Hi, all. My name is Laura. I am a Black woman with long curly hair, wearing a black shirt and a blue jacket. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Citizens of the World Charter Schools. So we're a national network of racially and socioeconomically diverse public charter schools. We're grateful to the Century Foundation and the panelists for this important conversation. My question for the panel is, how are you thinking about the role of charter schools in promoting school integration or in creating more diverse learning environments?
Great. And in the interest of time, maybe why don't we just have Hallie take this one, please?
I love this question. Thanks, Laura. I think charter schools can be really important partners in promoting school integration, and Citizens of the World, I think, is a great example of that. some of the aspects of what it means to be a charter school, the ability to pick an educational model and build a school from scratch, and the opportunity in most cases to enroll students from across a bigger geographic area, and in some cases to build diversity priorities in. These can be really great tools to create diverse learning spaces. And I think charter schools also have the potential to do work here that can translate over into district settings too. I live in Brooklyn, New York, and in District 15 in Brooklyn, all of the district middle schools now use a lottery-based admissions that has an algorithm for diversity that's built in. But actually, the first example of a school doing that in Brooklyn that paved the way and created an important precedent was Brooklyn Prospect Charter School. So I think there are really good opportunities too to use charter schools as some laboratories and to have collaboration. And I'll just note that fostering diverse schools is open to charter schools that are LEAs and is also open to collaborations. There could be charter schools that are applying with other charter LEAs or with school districts. So I think it's really important to keep having these avenues for innovation and supporting that work.
Laura, thank you for the question and for all the work that you do. We'll ask one more from a Bridges member. I would love to bring in Chris Thiel, representing Milwaukee Public Schools. Chris, welcome. What's your question?
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you. And thanks to everybody here. Chris Thiel, I'm the head of our governmental relations office with MPS, and really the Century Foundation, the Bridges Collaborative, and all the work being done by the Department of Ed, I think has given folks in Milwaukee, where we have a history of segregation, actual hope that some of the policies that disappeared, we have another chance to really gain from the work that's being done here. And what we've done with that hope is people have been, kind of sparked anew to have conversations between school districts to say, we know that we live in the segregated environment. We know that we need to do better for our kids. We have a generation of people who actually grew up in less segregated schools that our own children are going to now, which is a huge concern for us. So I'm almost, as I hear Sarah talk about the fact that these are not policies that are relics of the past. This is academic performance policy. This is policy that pushes our students forward. And what we are finding out is we actually need, and I really do genuinely appreciate all the work that folks at the Department of Ed are doing. But now that we have this hope, we need more. And I know people are moving as fast as they can, but what are any thoughts that you might have on policies for urban school districts like ours, surrounded by 15 to 20 local districts, where those walls between our districts in terms of the policies that have been created are real? What can we need models? We obviously need funding support to help with those models. And I appreciate that there's a bottom-up application for grants, but any more work we can do and any models that we could apply for situations like ours and the funding to go with it would be hugely beneficial. So I guess the question is, we've heard about magnet schools. Are there kind of inter-district bigger policies for situations like ours that are being considered and that we could have access to or can collaborate on moving forward?
Thanks, Chris. Anyone want to take this one? Inter-district models, and then we'll have one final question to close this out.
I'll just reiterate some of the information that I shared before, but the Fostering Diverse School Program, like the Magnet School Assistance Program, does include that competitive priority for regional approaches. School improvement funds can also be used for this purpose. So those are a few that I will plug there, and I'm not sure if others wanted to hop in and add something else.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I'll echo that we designed the Fostering Diverse Schools program with hopes that districts would work together to solve this problem in innovative ways. And we are hoping to provide those districts with technical assistance from experts at the department to make sure that they can do that in a smooth way. And we hope that this is just an initial investment in this program and that we can scale it up and share the ideas and the promising practices that we learned from this initial, I'll just put that out there and be optimistic, this initial cohort of grantees. And so our hope is that this is just step one, and we can get to the place where we're scaling up and starting communities of practice. And so want to be super clear about that.
And if I could just add one more point here, that there's a previous LPR report that highlights different interdistrict desegregation plans in Boston, Hartford, Connecticut, and Omaha that might be of interest too. If you can kind of see what went into that planning process.
Thank you all so much. I had another question I wanted to ask you, but we're in the interest of time. We have a very special partner that I want to toss it over to for our last question. So I want to say thank you to the panel. Thank you so much. Thanks for everyone out there for attending the event. A special thanks to our speakers, to the Century Foundation's Bridges Collaborative, the National Coalition on School Diversity, and Magnet Schools of America for your partnership in having this event come to life, and that a recording will be made immediately available on tcf.org. I want to toss it to, for our closing remarks, a very special collaborator in this work, Phil Tegler of the Poverty and Race Research Action Council, and also National Coalition on School Diversity. Phil, we're going to get everyone out of here on your closing remarks, so we'll let you take it away for the last couple minutes.
All right, no pressure. Well, thanks to the Bridges Collaborative for putting together this terrific session today. I'm a civil rights lawyer, white male with some hair and glasses and a blurred background. And I'm here representing the National Coalition on School Diversity, which is a national coalition of 50 or 60 groups committed to expanding school diversity in the US. Personally, I have a long background in school diversity work. I worked for 16 plus years on the Chef V. O'Neill case in Connecticut. Both of our kids were involved in magnet schools that were developed for purposes of racial and economic integration, both at the intra-district and inter-district level. So I've seen up close and personal how wonderful these learning environments are in my family. I want to close really by making a big pitch for the importance of applying for the Fostering Diverse Schools program. This is a relatively small grant program, but it's part of a larger multi-year movement that many of us have been involved with for years, especially in the past 3 years. A lot of hard work on the Hill with the Appropriations Committee, fighting for the president's recommendations for $100 million in the Fostering Diverse Schools program, fighting for a bipartisan bill called Strengthen Diversity. At the end of the day, we got funding allocated to this grants program in FY22 and FY23. And the response to this program from grantees, from local educational agencies and states, is going to determine what happens in the future. This is the first piece of money that's coming out. And it's really, there's a value to this for, it's a platform for organizing your community, for organizing your institution internally. And it's also an important platform for organizing DC for continued funding for these programs. We need to see a robust turnout of folks applying for these funds. It's going to help us at the Department of Ed and in Congress to get more funds next year. And we've basically been told that, if show us the demand for these programs. We realize it's a challenge to put together an application in 60 days, but it's time really now for folks to step up who believe in this cause and in this movement, because we're at the beginning of a process now, I think, where the funding will continue to grow year after year. And, I think it's your turn if you're working in a local district or you're a nonprofit or advocate working with a local district. Now is the time to step up and to show the federal government that we really need this money and we're going to make this count. So that's my closing remark, kind of a call to action. And it's been terrific to be part of this event today. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you all the partners that made this possible. And thank you everyone out there. That's it for us. Get your applications in if you're a school district or a state. And for everyone else, pay attention to this issue. So exciting to have this event come together, and we wish you all the best. Thank you.